Good morning, everyone. I pray that your Thursday had spaces and places of joy, places and spaces of peace, a time when you could laugh, a time when you could be silly, a time where you could just think, a time where you could just have fun, where you could just enjoy this thing called life. And even if that time period was only for a minute, if it was for 5 minutes, if it was for 5 hours, it doesn't matter the length. I just pray that you had spaces and places where you were able to enjoy this thing called life. We've been talking about different types of fears, and today I'm trying to pack something in that hopefully will make sense, and if not, we will continue tomorrow. Before I move any further, please, I invite you to like and share this video, and for those who've been doing that consistently, I appreciate you. You have no idea how much joy you bring to my heart. For those who follow on a consistent basis, I love the comments. For those who just react and don't write a comment, I like that you're reacting. I like the interaction in whatever level that you choose to interact. So for each and every one of you, thank you. Today we're going to talk about fear of relationships, fear of rejection. Two sides of the same coin, or maybe not necessarily, but I'm going to make this thing work. So for a lot of us, if we are of any type of age, if we've ever had our heart broken, and that you can determine what that means. If you've ever had your heart broken, there is a possibility that the next time when you had opportunity to give yourself permission to engage with someone else, to possibly get to know someone else, to possibly begin to love someone else, that there may have been a fear there. There may have been a fear because the past relationship did not go well. Your heart was broken. There was a time when you entered into that past relationship when everything was wonderful. You would smile when you thought of that person's name. You would anxiously check your phone to see if you had gotten a message. You would have churning in your stomach when you thought about the two of you may be coming together. There was meals that may have been shared. There may have been intimacy that was shared. There may have been trips and vacations and laughs and chuckles that just the two of you got. And then at some point, things did not go well and your heart got broken. The group LaBelle said, "Isn't it a shame that sometimes such a love must end?" And that happens. If you've been living long enough, you know what I'm talking about. Your heart has been broken. And so as you move forward in your life, some of you have determined, I'm never going to let that happen again. I'm never going to expose myself. I'm never going to be so vulnerable that my heart will be broken. And therefore, you progress in this stage of fear of rejection, fear of relationships. And let's talk about where that may have come from, because it may not have started with getting your heart broken. For some of us, it may have started a long time ago. If you read my book, I talk about that I was not raised by my parents. And so I spent most of my childhood just trying to be as small as possible, as quiet as possible, because I was afraid that if I was noticed, people may say, oh, she can't be here, that I might be rejected. So I tried to be as small as possible. And unfortunately, I carried that into my adult life, trying to not really be noticed, trying to just fit in so I could stay in. And it cost a lot. It cost me my voice. It cost me possibly being able to excel in ways that I've not necessarily reached, but rest assured, I'm very pleased where I find myself at this part of my life, because I believe this is exactly where I need to be. But anyway, back to fear of rejection. It impacts our fear of being in relationship. For some, it was being bullied. Some of you all experience being bullied. And I want to talk about it from the two different gender perspectives. For a lot of women, we have a belief that, well, I can't deal with other women. I just don't get along with them. And I invite you to kind of look back and see, where does that come from? As young girls, as children, female little girls can be vicious. We can be ruthless in terms of who's in and who's out. And so if we're not the queen bee, if we're not the one running the show, we spend a great deal of our lives yearning to be a part of the in crowd, but trying to stay as quiet as possible so we're not the ones who's being ostracized. We're not the ones who's being bullied. We're not the one who's being made fun of, because we know what that feeling of rejection feels like. So as we become adults, we decide, you know what? Rather than deal with that, I'm just not going to deal with women, other women. I'm not going to deal with people who remind me of what it felt like to not be in the in crowd. For guys who have been bullied, and I'm not a man, so I really can't speak from experience, but I suspect that when if you grew up as a male and you were bullied, it also put similar messages into your psyche that possibly other men may not necessarily be able to be trusted. It may make you question your own sense of your own masculinity in terms of, am I a weakling? Am I strong? Can I defend myself? The reality, whether it was male or female who was who was doing the bullying, the reality is bullies bully other people because they have something going on inside of them. There's places and spaces inside of them where they do not feel affirmed. So they seek affirmation by taking advantage, by making fun of other people. But guess what? As children, we don't care about the explanation. All we know is we want the bullying to stop. And the message that it teaches us, that some of us took into adulthood, is that certain people who have the same gender as our bullies, can't be trusted. And therefore, as adults, we can now defend ourselves and speak up for ourselves. It can severely impact our relationship. Another fear of rejection or fear for relationships that may come up is some of us may have been children of divorced parents. Our parents were together when we were born, but somewhere along the line, our parents divorced. And as kids, we're not privy to all of the ins and outs, all the reasoning whys, all of the situations that our parents may have been challenged with each other, brought on by society, brought on by whatever. All we know is that the two people who we love the most in the world have decided to split, and our world has gone completely awry. And so the internalized message that we may begin to say is, I'm never going to get married because going through my parents' divorce was too difficult. And I'm afraid that if I give my heart to someone, it might not work. I'm afraid that if I allow myself to fully be open and vulnerable, that relationship may dissolve. So I'm realizing, as I said earlier, that this is a lot to try to put into one video. So I will do a part 2 tomorrow. But just know, as I wrap up for this part today, that fear of rejection very much impacts and can lead to fear of relationships. And I'm not just talking about intimate relationships, but I'm talking about relationships with friends, relationships with family. Some people pride themselves with, I don't have many friends, I just have associates. Well, I'm not exactly sure what that means, and maybe someone can write in the comments and explain to me exactly what that means, but I suspect that somewhere in the unpacking, there may be a bit of a fear that kind of undergirds that belief. Again, fears can be debilitating, but they don't have to take over. They can be debilitating. They can be something that we've lived with for a long period of time. But trust me, we can grow through those fears. We can find happiness. We can find balance. We can have good, healthy relationships, sustaining relationships, affirming relationships, in spite of the fear. And I'm going to say that again, in spite of the fear. Because again, we don't have to wait for the fear to leave in order to take a risk. We can take a risk even as we're afraid. At the bottom of the description, there's the link I had told you about. It is now live. If you need someone to talk with, if you feel like engaging with a counselor could be helpful for you, I have a link. All you have to do is access the link and you will be connected with a counselor who will speak with you either via video or telephone or whatever may work for you. And these counseling services are also offered internationally. So again, like and share and focus on healing. Believe that you can heal, believe in restoration, and I invite you to do it on purpose. See you tomorrow with part 2. Bye-bye.